My name is Ian McNeill. My wife, Lori, and I are from Danville, California, which in terms of location is about a flight from SFO to ORD and a 3.5-hour drive in a Santa Fe Hyundai with a misalignment. Here we are. My father was Ted McNeill, Theo, as you referenced. His father was Edward McNeill, who was your grandmother's brother, who we knew as Tante Amy. And I remember her from when I was a real little guy. And I remember one trip in particular, this is in the early 60s. She had been visiting in Grand Rapids. She was then going to Australia next. She took the train from Grand Rapids to Los Angeles, and I remember it was Union Pacific Streamliner, the city of Los Angeles. And I think they didn't stepping down from that train. I don't remember much about the visit, but I sure remember that train. And maybe because I shared with your father, Roel, the love of trains, interest in trains. My two brothers send their condolences. They had a chance to meet the Roel as well. Thank you for the slideshow and the stories you told. There were pieces that filled in things for me as well. I want to return to the one story in particular regarding the Indonesian nationalists. It's a story we heard on our end as well, because as you mentioned, your father and my father were in that together. And leaving that, once they got to the Netherlands, they went their separate ways. My father and your father spent a lot of time together as kids in Indonesia. And I noticed you mentioned he called it paradise. He also referenced it as Eden. And isn't that something we've heard from anybody Dutch we know? 250,000 Dutchmen in Indonesia before World War II. And that was Eden to them. Anyway, moving on. So my father and he were not in touch for many years. They may have corresponded by letter and whatever else. But then I noticed when you mentioned in the 90s he retired and hit the road. And it was on some of those visits to Chico. At one point, he called up my dad, and he drove down to Woodland, California, where my father was. And subsequent years, when he came out, he drove up to California, he'd stop in, and my father and him would just go away and just talk crazy. Spend a lot of time, a lot of flashing back to their childhood. It was on one of those occasions when my father called me and he says, "Hey, I want you to come over and meet my cousin Roel." I drove up to Woodland and that was my introduction. Such an interesting man. I am very lucky to have met your father and over the years established somewhat of a little correspondence with him. I went on a road trip around the country in 2007 in Minneapolis. I picked up my in-laws and they drove with me through the Upper Peninsula down through Michigan. The idea then was to get the ferry over to Milwaukee. Well, I couldn't do that without stopping in. I gave him a call, and we went to lunch. My in-laws, Roel, myself. Very interesting, very fun afternoon. I want to get back to that Indonesian nationalist story because, that was big. I don't think any of us can comprehend how big and how, what a threat that was. And my wife has asked me not to pass along some of the bullet details of that we're told in that too. That's for another time. But what a thought, what a situation to have been pulled into that prison under constant threats of death, being jailed, and hours later, being the cells opening up, and they're being told they could leave. Rescued by the British workers who have a reputation of their own. And for me, your father's passing, look looking back at that time, I mean, that was big. And like I said before, anybody who was Dutch, Indo-Dutch, and any time in Indonesia, that was a change of life. That was life turned upside down for the Bagpack family, for the McNeill family. And I think it's timely we remember that every so often. With all the turmoil and the craziness in the world today, our parents lived through a period that we hope we never have to deal with. And the story of Indonesian nationalists particularly resonating still as they did good. They did really good for us. Again, I'd like to say, I'm honored to have met your father, to have had conversations with him, spent time with him, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.